Earlier this summer, I had asked Craig Bowman to do a Deacon Speaking episode with me to just talk about things that are going on in our country. And he, being gracious as Craig always was, he agreed to do so. What follows is some of that interview that I wanted to share with all of you. You know, one thing that I will always remember, and in fact, the thing that I always think of first when I think of Craig Bowman, is when he would lecture at Risen Christ and he would sit in the front row and he would sit literally on the edge of his pew. And he'd sit on that edge of his pew, leaning forward, attentively, really eagerly listening to the gospel and then the homily. It was as if he was saying that he didn't want to miss one word about his faith or about Jesus Christ. I absolutely love that about him. In the final commendation prayer in our funeral rites, there's a piece of that prayer that says, "We give thanks to you for your blessings, for the gifts that you bestowed on Craig. They are signs of your goodness." Craig Bowman was a blessing to so many people. I think most of us will never know, but we give thanks for his life. Rest in peace, Craig. Here. I just wanted to start with a little light humor here. So as a man with a background, dedicated his life to the English language and teaching our youth how to speak it and write it correctly. Do you just have nightmares all the time reading the second reading, these epistles from St. Paul? Does it just drive you up the wall? The king of run-on sentences?
No, I have fun with his impatience and his anger with these new Christians. The one reading I love from him is he's speaking to the Galatians, and he starts the letter out, "You stupid Galatians, what's the matter? Are you really that stupid?"
Well, he was quite frank.
Yes, right up front.
Anyway, I just would ask you, Craig, what do you see and what do you feel about what's going on right now in our country?
Deacon, one of the very first things I noticed, and I've noticed it probably all of my adult life since high school, is that when people reach out in a very racist or very negative way, is that what they're saying to me basically is, I do not believe in myself as God's child. I constantly have to put somebody else down because I don't believe in me. I don't believe in myself as a child of God. I fully, profoundly don't believe it. And so you'll see it in my behavior. If I believe in myself, boom, you and I are best friends. If I don't see it if I don't see myself as God's child, I don't believe, I'm going to treat a lot of people very poorly.
When I think about racism, I think other people are not seeing that person of color as a child of God, but you're really saying it can be the other way around as well, that they themselves have failed to truly embrace what that means.
Yes, I agree. One of the things that surprised me ever since high school is the number of people who graduated from that Catholic high school who really, truly did not believe in himself. And that's fundamental. If you don't believe in yourself, it's going to come out in one way or the other.
But I would say, I'm not racist. I would say that. And I think a lot of white Americans would say that. But my question to you, is that enough?
Um, Tim, I wouldn't say that that's not enough. Um, you know, what does the gospel say? By their works, you will know them. By their works. And when you or Father Scott or Father Eric stand up and speak out against racism, that's part of it. I think that the way we're going to get through this, if you will, this pandemic of racism, and it's real, there's no denying it. But we're not going to get through it by me attacking you or accusing you of being a racist. It's not going to be by you putting me down or being a racist. It's going to be the two of us together. And what's that Latin phrase? That we may be one. Ut unam sint. That we may be one. No. What does the old hymn say? In Christ there is no east or west. I am not going to progress. Me, Craig Bowman. I'm all about me. I'm not going to get ahead by putting you down. You are not going to make any progress with your family or with the rest of society by putting anybody else down. It doesn't work like that. Fundamentally, we all have to care about each other.
I keep thinking about not 2 Sundays ago, not yesterday, but 2 Sundays ago, the gospel reading, which is, of course, from Matthew, where Christ is saying, you can't love, and I'm paraphrasing, Lord, forgive me. It always sounds weird to say you're paraphrasing Jesus, but anyway. I'm ordained, I can do that, I think. Anyway, but he says, you can't love your mother, your father, your brother. You can love nothing more than me. You can love nothing more than God.
I've had this situation where somebody says, why is the Catholic Church the only thing you ever talk about? Well, I'm in love with that God who brought me all through the orphanage and the poverty to the success I enjoy today and the peace and the happiness that I have today. I do not do that walking into Risen Christ Church and counting the colors. That's not, I'm in love with that God who's in that tabernacle. That's the one who keeps me sane. But that's some people's perspective. And, you know, how do some of our Black saints, St. Martin de Porres comes to mind, how did they do the same thing? And he was missing Julia Greeley. Yeah. Father Scott talked about her just the other day. How did she see past all the color? And she had, you know, if you haven't read her life, she had some of those priests down at Sacred Heart calling her some pretty bad racial epithets. How did she see past that to God? And in that situation, giving something to people who were poorer than she was. How do you do that? But you can't say, I love God first and walk into any church or I'm a retired teacher, walk in any school building and count the colors. That's not loving God first. One of the most tragic things that I've ever experienced, for instance, is Columbine. I was lying in here right next door in bed, sleeping in because my school was closed. And just before I got up, somebody called me up and said, did you know that John Tomlin died? He really liked you. John Tomlin was one of the white kids who died over at Columbine. And when I went to his memorial service, his mother saw me and she kept jumping up and down hysterically, crying hysterically. Not because I'm Black, because I was serving her son. All she knew, she loved her son and she lost him very tragically. Here's his best teacher. Here's his favorite teacher. So even though we need to be very, very alert, very, very aware, we need to be alert about the number of kids who kill themselves. We need to be alert about the number of young kids who OD on opioids. But that doesn't mean we switch our attention away from God. No, this is a mission for you to solve. Help to solve this problem. He's not calling on you because you're white. He's not calling you because you're Black. He's using that as an instrument of his getting through to you, getting through to others.
Craig, I think maybe you should be a deacon and be preaching.
No, let me preach with my life.
And Craig is also a veteran.
Yeah.
Served in the U.S. Army, right?
2 years.
So I wanted to bring this up to you because I always noticed this, but Craig was one of the few people that lector at Risen Christ that actually still wear a coat and dresses up. Maybe not all the time, but I used to always wear on your coat the pin, and if I'm correct, I believe that's the Army Commendation Medal.
Yes, it is.
I know that because my grandfather received the same award in the Navy. So what did you get that for?
Oddly enough, I was helping the 3rd Armored Division, which is headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany. And I was working with Major General Kraft and the other leadership in the 3rd Armored Division at the time. We were working on racial issues. We had some really horrible racial situations on the Kitty Hawk in the Navy and in Germany. And so the last year and a half that I was in the Army, I was working on racial issues. And we were struggling with field grade officers. One was a full bird colonel. And this man, literally, full bird colonel, he was just under brigadier general. This man literally could not say the word Black without using the word thugs.
Oh.
Now that's a real problem with individual racism and not the institutional racism. Although both still endure in the armed forces, but this one guy just literally couldn't say Black without saying the word thugs right behind it.
So your work was noticed and you were commended for it.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
For those of you out there that think I planted that, I didn't know any of that story. I just knew, coming from a military family, I just knew that award, what it was, and I had never asked Craig. So God in his providence. Climate. Is there anything that you'd want to say to your brothers and sisters today, or how to cope with this, or what they can do, or I don't know, just any last words of wisdom?
See, that guy who calls me the N-word, how do I forgive him? See, that's the standard. That's the standard I have. That's the standard you have as a servant of God. That guy who just called me that racial epithet, I can't bring myself to forgive him, at least not consciously. What I can do, and what I've had to do in struggling with my own anger, is find it in my heart to understand what it is about me that scares that person who is behaving in a racist manner. That Colonel Wallace was his name. How do I understand why he thinks he needs to hurt me? And understand him, even though I find it very, very hard to forgive him or to say that to him.
I just wanted to say, Craig, you are a blessing to our parish. You are. I've known you, and I've been involved in many small groups and men's groups with you. You have a perspective of life that I just don't know. And I mean from obviously your race, but also from your work as a school teacher and how you've affected so many young lives. And you talked your story about you affected those parents too by the work. I have no doubt in my mind that you are living the call that God has asked you to do since he knew you in the womb. And I find that refreshing. I find that humbling. I find that challenging. And I hope the rest of our parish does too. I just want you to know that I will pray for you. And I pray for every person of color in the United States and in the world that has dealt with any type of racism or just been judged by how they look. And I ask all of us and that see this to just pray for an end to that and pray for God to give you guidance on the one more thing that you can do to help that.
Thank you. Let me say one last thing, that God came to me when I was 7 years old, and you remember that whole idea of the age of reason. And God said to me, I'm going to put this, your color, I'm going to put orphanage, I'm going to put poverty, I'm going to put talent in music, talent in speaking, talent in writing. I'm going to mix that all up. And at 7 years old, you've got to make up your mind. Do you wish to be happy with me now and in paradise? And a whole lot of my brother and sister orphans said, no, I don't want to be happy. I want to be angry for the rest of my life because God took family away from me. And I said, yes. But he says, say yes to me and say yes to happiness. If you say no, boom, it's not looking good.
Well, that's a good message. It's a good one to end on. And that, well, as we always think about Mary and her fiat, well, thank you for your yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you for yours.
And thank you for your continued service to the church.